The alarm had barely stopped ringing when Dunn realized that the quiet outside his quarters wasn't normal. Guards in black armor, faces hidden behind visors that reflected no light, stood waiting. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and tried to ask what was happening. The guards didn't respond. Hello? I think you've got the wrong. His words were cut off as one of them grabbed his arm. The grip was firm, precise, the kind of hold you learn to respect quickly in combat. Dunn found himself marching down the corridor like cargo with legs. Polished floors reflected his confusion back at him. The shuttle ride to Tala Prime was short, 40 minutes, but long enough for Dunn to replay every bad decision he had made in the past 6 months. The bar fight with Councillor Vet's nephew, the ruined fountain incident, and the countless times he'd interpreted security reports, all of it now seemed to march him toward some cosmic punishment. He wondered if any of it mattered. The palace came into view like a jagged crystal jutting out from the capital city. Energy fields shimmered around it, making the shuttle's sensors twitch. The landing platform dwarfed his imagination. Once on the ground, the guards dragged him through halls lined with tapestries depicting wars of long-eared warriors and giant beasts. Everything screamed wealth, power, and authority he didn't belong near. At the end of the hall, enormous doors swung open silently, revealing a circular chamber filled with people who could make a human feel insignificant by mere presence. General Kai Roz, in crimson armor, radiated control. Minister Tholen looked like he calculated outcomes for fun. But none of them mattered as much as the figure at the center, Queen Theris. She was 7 feet of blue-skinned, golden-haired, violet-eyed perfection. A blade rested in her hand, not ceremonial, clearly sharpened for combat. She circled him, silence between them thick enough to suffocate. Beside her stood a woman Dunn instantly recognized, though he shouldn't. Pale, black-haired, elegant, and strangely familiar. Aaron, the minor trade liaison from Casemere Station, the woman who had laughed at his jokes and kissed him under the artificial stars. She rested a hand on her stomach, protective, defiant, and somehow terrifying. Dunn went to his knees. His mind screamed in loops. Why is she here? Why do I feel like I've already failed? The Queen spoke. Did you know my daughter is pregnant, human? The words hit Dunn like a meteor strike. Pregnant. Aaron. Princess Aaron. His brain could barely connect the dots. And the council behind the Queen only made matters worse. Scarred ministers spoke of execution, ancient law, and bloodlines. Cross-species conception was nearly impossible. Humans and Talvans were supposed to be incompatible. Yet, Aaron's hand rested on her stomach. Dunn wanted to laugh, cry, or disappear. Instead, he tried to explain, I didn't know, but his voice was drowned by counselors shouting, legal texts recited in a language that sounded like singing knives, and General Kairos reciting the old laws about blood right, sovereign bond, and the protection of heirs. And then, the impossible happened. The council knelt. King, they intoned in unison. Dunn thought he must be dreaming. A contractor from Detroit, late for breakfast and terrible with forms, was now king of Tala Prime. He tried to protest. There's paperwork, forms, resumes. But the scarred minister smirked. The blood right is invoked at conception. You became king the moment the child took root. Human, whether you deserve it or not. Aaron stepped forward. Her voice was calm but firm. I didn't tell him. He had no choice. He had no intent. He protects the child by law. Her words silenced the room. Her defiance was magnetic, and Dunn realized she had always been extraordinary, even when he had first met her. The Queen, furious and measured, stepped aside, acknowledging the blood right. The council debated, calculated, plotted, but the law was clear. And so, Dunn, bewildered, exhausted, and completely unqualified, was now bound to a planet, a throne, and a child he hadn't expected. The palace prison. They escorted him to a guest suite that was really a gilded prison. Doors sealed magnetically, every chair, table, and lamp screamed wealth beyond comprehension. Dunn sat on a chair that adjusted to his body as if it could read his thoughts. Aaron, sitting across from him, looked out the window at the glittering capital. He exploded with questions. Why didn't you tell me who you were? How is this even possible? Do I get a crown? Please say there's not a hat. Aaron smiled faintly, tired but genuine. No hat. It's a neural interface. Protects you and the palace systems. Stops assassination. Makes sure you don't accidentally declare war. Dunn flopped back in the chair. Good. Brain-reading hat. Much better than a real crown. Aaron laughed softly. I handled refreshments at Casemere. The rest was me being the heir in hiding. My mother thought catering would be safe. She was wrong. Dunn processed the science-defying fact that they had conceived a child. Humans and Talvans had 0.03% compatibility. Biochemistries misaligned, conception almost impossible. Yet, here they were, a living, undeniable result of impossible odds. The choice. Dunn paced. Running was an option. Disappear into the outer colonies. Bribe a pilot. Vanish. But then he looked at Aaron. She wasn't afraid. She was calm, practical, facing the impossible with him. I'm not selling, he said. I'm being honest. I'm not leaving our kid. Aaron's eyes softened slightly. 3 nights on Casemere Station. You were just done. I was just Orin. Nothing else mattered. I didn't choose this, but I chose you then. Now it's the universe deciding. Dunn took a deep breath. I'm not in love with you. I don't know you well enough. But I am in this for the kid. And for you. And apparently, the universe has a sense of humor. Aaron extended her hand. Not romantic, not ceremonial, practical. Dunn took it. Cold, firm, grounding. He felt the weight of responsibility settle, mingled with fear. Acceptance. Queen Theris appeared at the door, blades sheathed, ice in her expression. Behind her, the council waited, watching. I told them we'd hear your answer first. Will you run or will you stand? Dunn looked at the city below, the life he left in Detroit, the kid who would never ask why their father abandoned them. He looked at Aaron, unwavering. I'll stand. I'll be terrible at this. I'll insult half the council by accident. I'll need coaching. But I'm staying. For Aaron. For the kid. And because apparently, the universe thinks a contractor from Detroit should know what a crown weighs. General Kairos smiled. The scarred minister scowled. Aaron squeezed Dunn's hand. The Queen, after a long moment, nodded once. Acknowledgement, not acceptance, but enough. Come, she said, gesturing to the corridor. Your counsel awaits, King Dunn Cortez. Try not to embarrass us immediately. Dunn swallowed hard. He had no idea what he was doing, but he would learn. One step at a time. For the first time in his life, he was exactly where he didn't want to be. And yet, somehow, it felt right. Ending note. The city below shimmered with lights, like circuitry of a civilization he barely understood. And in that glittering chaos, Dunn realized humans might just survive, and even thrive, in impossible places. Against odds that should have been zero, against laws older than humanity itself, he was king. And somehow, that was only the beginning. Dunn woke to the soft hum of Tala Prime's palace systems. Light filtered in through the massive window of the guest suite. He'd quickly realized was more of a gilded cage than a room. His body ached from kneeling, pacing, and adrenaline. But his mind was already racing. Today wasn't going to be easy. He was going to meet his council officially, face the court, and probably survive his first attempt at diplomacy. Somehow, he had to keep a planet and a child alive. Aaron was already awake, sitting by the window, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on her stomach. Her eyes caught his reflection in the glass, silver meeting human brown. Morning, she said quietly. Sleep. Dunn shook his head. Not really. But I had nightmares about paperwork, so I guess that counts. Aaron's faint smile was comforting. You'll figure it out. Just, remember, the law protects you. The blood right is absolute. You can't be removed. Not yet. He nodded. Absolute or not, he didn't feel protected. He felt exposed. And unqualified. The first council session. By mid-morning, Dunn was escorted to the council chamber again. This time, he wore a simple tunic the palace tailors had hastily measured for him. He looked at the council, a dozen faces hardened by politics, war, and ancient traditions. General Kairos, arms crossed, watching him like a human puzzle piece dropped into an alien machine. Minister Tholen, already calculating ways to turn this absurd situation to his advantage. The scarred minister, silent, judging every inch of Dunt's posture. The Queen's violet eyes rested on him briefly before shifting to her daughter. Aaron, standing beside her mother, projected calm authority, her silver eyes surveying the room as though already reading the future. Dun swallowed hard. "Good morning," he said. His voice sounded small in the vast chamber. He immediately regretted it. Kairos spoke first. "King Dun, the first issue before the council is the rising unrest in the northern sectors. Rebels claim dissatisfaction with the crown. Your predecessor would have addressed this directly, but," her gaze shifted subtly to Aaron, "the succession is complicated." "Right," Dun said, nodding. "Rebels. Got it. Not my fault. Not yet, anyway." A ripple of annoyance passed through the room. Dun realized humor was dangerous here. "King Dun," Aaron interjected smoothly, "the rebels are armed, organized, and currently exploiting the confusion around the succession. They believe Tala Prime is weakened. If we respond without caution, we risk escalation." Dun blinked. "Right. Escalation. I get it. So, diplomacy first, guns later." Aaron nodded. "Exactly. The science of leadership." The next hours were a whirlwind of briefings, reports of rebel attacks, diplomatic communications, supply lines, and security protocols. Everything was in a language and style Dun was only half familiar with, but Aaron guided him. She explained Talvern military hierarchy, political allegiances, and even how the neural interface of his coronation circuit allowed him to monitor systems remotely. "Think of it as a heads-up display," she said, flipping through a holographic projection of the planet. "We can see troop movements, communications, and logistics. But it won't make decisions for you." "Ah," Dun muttered. "So basically, I'm wearing a very expensive watch that also judges me constantly." Aaron smiled faintly. "More or less. Just remember, your decisions now impact not just Tala Prime, but alliances across 5 neighboring systems." Dun paused. 5 neighboring systems. Got it. No pressure. The first challenge, rebel negotiations. By afternoon, Dun found himself on a shuttle to the northern sectors. Aaron, Kairos, and a handful of trusted generals accompanied him. The rebellion wasn't a faceless threat. They were people who felt abandoned, ignored, and powerless. Dun's first instinct was to talk. To understand. They landed near a small encampment, fortified but clearly lacking the resources of the palace army. Rebels emerged cautiously, weapons lowered but ready. A woman stepped forward, her eyes sharp, her stance both defiant and wary. "You are the human?" she asked, voice carrying over the wind. "I'm Dun," he said, lifting his hands in the universal gesture of peace. "King of Tala Prime. But, I'm also new. Terribly new. Like, 5 minutes ago new. So let's talk, yeah." Aaron translated when necessary, but Dun noticed something remarkable. The rebels listened. Not because he commanded respect, but because humans have a tendency to be unpredictable, and unpredictability can be a tool. Hours passed. Words replaced gunfire. Questions replaced threats. Dun admitted he didn't have all the answers. He didn't even know all the laws. But he promised fairness, inclusion, and support. He shared stories of his Earth upbringing, of mistakes made and lessons learned. Surprisingly, it resonated. By sunset, rebel leaders agreed to a temporary ceasefire, pending further discussions. Dun had done nothing heroic in the traditional sense. No lasers fired, no battles won, but he had earned a measure of trust. A threat from the outer systems. No sooner had they returned to the palace than a new alert came in. A fleet from the neighboring system of Virel had entered Tala Prime's orbital space. Dun's heart sank. He had read about Virel in briefings, aggressive, expansionist, and extremely good at exploiting internal weakness. Kairos and Aaron brought him to the tactical deck. Holos of the incoming fleet floated above the console. Ships bristled with weapons, engines glowing ominously. King Dun, Kairos said. They could be here for trade negotiations. Or invasion. Or testing our response. Or they're here to throw me into a volcano because I'm human, Dun muttered. Aaron smirked. Volcanoes are rare on Tala Prime. But yes, other options are plausible. The council convened. Dun felt the weight of every eye in the room. He realized something crucial. Leadership wasn't about knowing everything, it was about choosing the right priorities under impossible pressure. After consulting Aaron, Kairos, and Tholen, he made a decision. We'll open communications. Offer a ceremonial welcome. No troops visible. Show strength, not aggression. The council murmured. It was audacious. Dangerous. But humans, Dun thought grimly, are good at being audacious. The unexpected diplomacy. The Virel delegation arrived. Tall, angular, with faces like sculpted metal. Their leader, Supreme Chancellor Vaya, stepped forward, scanning Dun with cold, calculating eyes. You are the human? He asked, voice sharp and metallic. Yes, Dun said. And yes, I'm king. Apparently. And no, I didn't apply for the job. Aaron translated when needed, but Dun noticed Vaya seemed amused. Not angered. Amused. Hours of negotiation followed. Dun made mistakes, protocol errors, mispronunciations, awkward pauses, but he also spoke honestly, directly. He emphasized Tala Prime's sovereignty, the Council's oversight, and, subtly, his own unpredictability. By the end, Vaya agreed to leave Tala Prime's orbit peacefully, citing human unpredictability as a variable worth avoiding. Dun returned to the palace exhausted, exhilarated, and terrified. Somehow, he had survived his first diplomatic crisis. A personal lesson. That evening, Aaron found him staring out at the city from the same window where they had talked about running or staying. You handled them, she said quietly. I think, Dun replied. I might be okay at this. Maybe. Probably not. But I survived, didn't I? Aaron touched his arm. You didn't just survive. You adapted. Humans are like that. You see chaos, you survive it. You see impossibility, you find a way. That's why you're special. Dun laughed softly. I was just trying not to get shot. Aaron shook her head. No. You were trying not to fail people who have no one else. That's the difference. Dun's eyes drifted to her stomach. The child. The unexpected, impossible life they had created. His life had changed forever, yet somehow, for the first time, he felt like he belonged. Not because of a crown, not because of law, but because he chose to face the impossible rather than run. The night of shadows. Sleep didn't come easily. Shadows moved along the walls of his room, palace security, council spies, even unknown threats. He realized that being king wasn't just about diplomacy or strategy. It was about vigilance, resilience, and constant adaptation. He touched the neural interface of the coronation cirlet. Systems hummed, lights flickering across his vision. It wasn't a hat. It was a bond between him and Tala Prime, a constant reminder that every decision, every movement, had consequence. And then the message arrived. A single line, encrypted, sent from an unknown source. Your reign is noticed. The galaxy will watch. Be ready. Dun's chest tightened. He realized the universe wasn't done testing him. If the Bloodright had chosen him, fate had decided he was capable. Humans are supposed to survive. Humans are supposed to endure. And Dun Cortez, accidental king of Tala Prime, realized that survival was no longer enough. He had to thrive. Ending note. The city lights glittered below, the palace's spires glowing in the early night. For the first time, Dun understood that leadership wasn't about power. It was about choice, courage, and the people who trusted you, even when the odds were against you. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, rebellions, political intrigue, alien fleets, and the personal trials of raising a child that science said shouldn't exist. But tonight, he had survived. And in that survival, he found the first flicker of hope, the first spark of resolve, and the quiet promise that maybe humans were meant for the impossible.